بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب زدني علما.
The next thing we'll talk about something called number distribution. Like I said, if you need to get a public IP, we will be getting a public IP from service portal, and the service portal gets from INA, ina.org. So basically, what exactly INA is? INA stands for Internet Assigned Number Authority. That's an abbreviation. It's a non-profit American corporation. Probably it oversees the allocation of your IP addresses, like especially for public IPs, for either it is IP version 4 or IP version 6. So we have discussed about IP version 4 already. And also the autonomous system numbers. Autonomous system numbers is actually a global number used for identifying one organization. So when we get into routing topics, I'll be talking more on autonomous system number in details. And also some other protocol parameters, including the DNS management, DNS route management options. So basically they are responsible for managing these things. Okay, so here if you just talk about IP address allocations, or all these allocations it will maintain. So INA is operated by Internet Corporation for assigned names and numbers. That's something maintained by. And this INA is going to delegate all the address blocks. Address blocks are all these things basically to RIRs. So RIR stands for Regional Internet Registries. Now these are like RIRs. Basically the job of the RIR is to allocate these addresses, whatever is given, is to different areas of the world. Like here there are 5 RIRs. We have something like ERIN. ERIN actually stands, we'll see this. Basically there's something called Africa region. This Africa, basically this is an African region. And similar way we have Asia Pacific region, that is another RIR, Regional Internet Registries. And again ERIN is basically looking after Canada, US, mostly in the European countries. And then you have Latin America region, and then we have some Europe, Middle East, Central Asia, different region. So we call we call them as RIRs. These RIRs allocates the addresses in different parts of the world. So if you visit this URL, basically ina.org, that's an official website to look for. Generally, here you can see the allocation here. These are the 5 different regions. And if you click on these URLs, you can go to the specific website of those particular RIRs. So if I go to these regions, you can even open up that. So basically what they're responsible for. So INA is responsible for assigning the addresses in a hierarchical manner. So basically they assign the addresses to these RIRs. So again, you can see these are the specific websites to reach those specific RIRs. So these RIRs, what they do is they are responsible for delegating all these addresses to the regional service providers generally. Like if you see the hierarchy of INA and RIR, INA is going to delegate these blocks of addresses, whether it is an IPv4 address or IPv6 address or autonomous system number. Basically, they will be allocating them to RIR. Like here, you can see there are different options here. Now, again, from this RIR, each RIR will get some blocks of addresses from INA, and this block is further divided in that region, allocated to different ISPs. So generally, ISPs as well as it can be either ISPs or it can be something called national internet registries, or even local internet registries, we can say. So local internet registries refers to specific some service providers or ISPs, or even some kind of enterprise companies, or maybe some academic institutions. Basically they all come under this category. So typically the naming wise we call them as local internet registries. From there it reaches the end user. So which means if the end user requires a public IP, let's say, so basically they will contact the local service provider or their local national internet registry, or if that particular end user is a big company, so basically they can also reach the specific RIR as well. So mainly it depends, but the allocation is done through here from these regions, and from there it will be allocated to service providers. From there you get the end users. So depending upon each country, each region, we have something like country-wise national internet registries. This is like country-wise registries allocated to specific countries before the end user gets. Like here you can see the points. The RIR divides the allocation addresses into blocks and delegate them to the service providers and the other organizations within that operating regions. So if you want to see this allocation, like if you try to see the IPv4 allocation space, or even there is an IPv4 multicast addresses, like here you can see these are the addresses reserved. So this /8 is actually the range, and you can see this is reserved for Ford Motor Company, and from Erin from here, like this, these are all the allocations. So depending upon the region, if I check, basically here, if I try to reach, depending upon the region, the public IP will vary. So based on the regions. So you can see this autonomous system number allocation also. Basically from here, if I go to INA website, if I go back here, I can also see the IPv6 address space. Even if you want to see the autonomous system numbers, like here, autonomous system numbers. If you click on this link, again, you can see the number ranges here. So more on the autonomous system number we'll be discussing in the routing space. So how the end user gets an IP. So if the end user requests the local service provider, as I said, so this company is going to request the local service provider for the public IP. Depending upon the size, the service provider will divide into small sizes, and that size we will see in the subnetting concepts when we cover in the next class or the next topics, basically. So based on that, the service provider will divide them into small blocks, depends upon the requirement, what is requested by the end customer. And again, if it is an IPv4, IPv6, different blocks are given, and the ISP distribute the addresses to its assigned space. Means whatever the range the service provider get from the INA or RIR, basically it will allocate from that to the end customers. So basically the end users, they can get the IP address range either from the service provider. They can contact the service provider, and the service provider will allocate whatever it gets from the RIR. Basically, depends upon the region. Or if you are working for a big corporate environment, you can even contact directly from RIR. So provider independent means, now the difference between these two is if you are getting a public IP from your local service provider, and if you are moving to a different service provider, then basically you also need to change the IPs, the public IPs you are using. But if you're getting the IP from the RIR, then basically even if you're moving from one service provider to another service provider, you don't need to make any changes. So that's the reason most of the big size companies generally they prefer to get their public IPs directly from the RIR, so that if they're moving from one ISP to another ISP network, then basically they don't need to make any changes to their existing network configurations. Again, if you're a small company, basically with a small address space you require, then basically you go with a service provider. So that again depends how you get.